What advice would you give an aspiring investor that's maybe 6 to 12 months behind where you're at now?
Well, first of all, it starts with your dream, right? What do you want to do? What's your vision? What's your why, your
Yeah.
dream? But I think the first hurdle that everybody has to overcome is believing, right? They have to believe that it's possible for them. You can see that it's possible because you're doing it, I'm doing it, right? So if someone said to themselves, "Hey, I want to buy an apartment building," you can see that it's possible.
Mhm.
There's people out there executing this
Somebody
all the
owns them.
time. But believing that you can do it is the biggest struggle, really, I think. And that's something that sticks with you. You have to constantly remind yourself, I can do
Mhm.
this, right?
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe with Four Oaks Capital. Very excited for today's show. It's another one of our first deal series episodes. And, we have Sean Thomson on the line with us, who recently closed on I think it's a 76 unit apartment building in Irving, Texas, just outside of Dallas, for $8 million. Is that right?
Yeah. Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, that's
Okay.
well, it's a little under 8 million, just shy of 8 million is what it costs.
Well, we like to round up, 8
Yeah,
million
yeah,
sounds a lot better than, seven and change. So,
yeah.
rounding up is good. But yeah, that said, welcome and thanks for being on the show.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And incidentally, great meeting you in person at Jake and Gino. That was a good time. Always nice to have, a physical touch point with people. So that said, do us a favor and tell us a little bit about your background and kind of lead us into how you got into multifamily.
Well, I started pretty late in multifamily for sure. I started really late in actually in real estate investing. I worked my whole life. I've been in the cycling industry for, I don't know, since I was 18, really.
Mhm.
I guess my biggest name or job was I was the operations and equipment manager for USA Cycling. So I worked with the
Nice.
athletes that went to the Olympics in the mid 90s. That was kind of my
Mhm.
job back then, but I've worked in that business forever. And I didn't get into real estate till I was about 40, just under 40 years old, like 38, 40 years old.
Mhm.
So I really got started kind of late doing this stuff, but
Now
I
I'm
worked
going to
in
say
single family for
40
a
is
long
still
time.
very young. So
What
yeah,
what's that?
40 is still very young.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
let's go.
career wise, I think that's a
Yeah.
bit late to make a big change. I made it's a major change from but the cycling business to
Yep.
real estate at that age was a little bit of a change, but yeah, so I transitioned to single family real estate. It's
Mhm.
probably a decade or so ago that I kind of got started in that, and I didn't really know how to make it a business.
Mhm.
It was always kind of like I knew how to buy houses, and I knew how to kind of buy houses, fix them up, make money. But doing that over and over and over again, making money doing that every day, I didn't know how to do that. But my first house that I bought, my contractor was working on his investing job or career as well, and he just bought a home investors franchise. I don't know if you're familiar with home investors, the We
Mhm.
Buy Ugly Houses guys. You
Oh
see
yeah,
the
yeah.
billboards
I've seen
all over
those
town.
signs. The
Yeah,
bandit sign people.
yeah, they're all over. But
Yep.
so he bought this franchise, and it was kind of exactly what I've been looking for. I've been looking for a system that shows you how to kind of replicate this business, and so I went down right away and bought a franchise. And I was with them for a couple of years. It was great education, but their
Mhm.
interests in my business were different than I thought they should be. So I said, I'll see you later. And I was on my own for a really long time.
Mhm.
But my goal in my investing has always been income, right? And so I wanted, I want to invest and earn income every month. And single family just wasn't hitting the pace. And so a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, I transitioned into multifamily.
Nice, nice, nice. So, what got you from the cycling industry to the real estate industry? What was kind of going through your mind when you made that transition? And then, same question between single family and multifamily.
Well, I've always had high aspirations for my financial freedom, right? I've always wanted to be able to just write a check for problems, right?
Mhm.
If I get sick or someone in my family gets sick, and I don't want my doctor bills to bankrupt me. I
Yep.
want to be able to just cover those things. I want to be able to pay for my mortgage, my cars. I want to be able to pay for a lifestyle that makes me happy. I've always had those aspirations, and the cycling business was kind of a passion of mine. I love bike riding and
Mhm.
cycling, but I could never get to an income level that was sufficient to make those things possible. You just can't
Yeah.
write a $500,000 check to a doctor if you're sick
Mhm.
on a salary in the cycling industry. It just not doesn't really happen, right?
Yeah.
So real estate was always kind of something that I wanted, I read, of course, this is the pivotal book for everybody, but Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
Yep.
And I read that when I was, I guess, 30. So I was about 30 or so. And so,
Mhm.
ever since the age of 30, I'm like, well, I really want to change this, but I didn't know how, right? I just didn't know what steps to take. And so I just worked. I was being responsible, adult and responsible parent, and working and paying for my family. And so when I lost my job, I said, look, that's it. I'm not going back to a job. I'm going to make this happen, or I'm
Mhm.
going to die trying. Right.
Yeah.
And so I went out, like I said before, I went and just figured out how to buy a house and fix it up. Right.
Mhm.
And it just sort of grew from there. Once I started getting the resources and sort of the path to creating this business, that was what I wanted to do. But even in the beginning, I would drive down the street and see an apartment building and think to myself, man, if I could just own one of those,
Right.
if I could just have one of those, that would fix my problems. Right. That's exactly what I want. And I've had that dream for
Yeah.
forever. Right.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was impossible. I thought multifamily was just for hedge funds and REITs and high finance guys. I didn't know it was individuals like me that could even do that. But I
Funny
met,
you mentioned that,
yeah, go
when I
ahead.
read Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks a lot about multifamily and commercial real estate in that
Yeah.
book, among other things. But I think one of his big focuses is commercial real estate. I read that book and I came away with the same thing. Hey, commercial real estate sounds great for somebody else,
Right.
and it sounded too complicated for me. But fortunately, I was able to think big for me at the time, which was single family homes. And I started buying single family homes as rentals, so I think that there's some similarities there, where we both looked at the multifamily and
Right.
said, that's a bridge too far for me right now. So anyway,
It
yeah.
just always seemed out of reach. Yeah. It just seemed like I don't know if I could ever get there. It seemed like high finance. It seemed too complex. It just seemed too
Mhm.
big. Right. And then,
So what did you do to make that mental leap? I think a lot of people struggle with the same thing. Hey, I can imagine doing single family, but multifamily is just wow. How did you make that leap?
well, I met Corey Peterson, honestly.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah.
I was an investor field mastermind, and Corey's part of that investor field mastermind with Mike Hambright. Mike's a good friend of mine.
Mhm.
And Corey came in and did a talk one day, and as he's talking, he was telling his story. I mean, Corey's a simple man. He comes from
He is.
Missouri, and he's done a massive business for himself.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to this guy talking. I'm like, that is exactly the dream that I have
Mhm.
reoccurring in my mind. It was all I could do not to stand out of my chair and grab the guy and say, you gotta
Yeah.
show me how to do this right now. I was so excited at hearing his story, because what had happened was it took this big impossible thing that I thought was out of my reach and made it real for me. Right.
Mhm.
So there's a guy standing in front of me, looks just like me. We're just regular guys, and he's making this work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, if you can do it, I can do it. Right. And so I said, you have to teach me how to do this. And luckily he has a coaching and training program. He does Kahuna Boardroom and
Yep.
a few other things. And so I immediately joined his boardroom. Well, actually, no, sorry. It took me about a year. Actually, I
Mhm.
saw it. I saw that it was possible. And I started, I was still in my single family business. I'm like, I've got to give up my single family business to go make this happen, because I can only do one thing at a time. I can't
Mhm.
do two businesses. It's just too much for me. So I said, I'm going to have to give up my single family business to go do this multifamily. And it took me a year to kind of work that out in my mind if I really wanted to do that. Cause I was happy with my single family business,
Yep.
and to give that up to go do something completely new that may or may not work, was scary. So
Yeah.
I finally made that decision. Then I started joining Corey's programs, and he kind of laid the foundation for me to learn and move forward with the multifamily business.
Yeah. I really like Corey Peterson. We've had him on the show, and just like you said, he's a really, really simple guy, down to earth. And one thing I really enjoyed about him is I remember seeing him on stage once upon a time where, he basically had one hand up, one hand down, and said, this is his attitude. He has to have one, he has his own mentors, and they're pulling him up, and at the same time he's reaching down with one hand. And I think he does a really good job at that, at just trying to help and add value to other people. So I think that's similar to my story. I mean, had I known Corey Peterson before I jumped into the Michael Blunt coaching, maybe I would have been a big Kahuna boardroom member
Right.
too. But Great guy. And, a lot of similarities there with what a lot of people do. I mean, you have to get educated. And I think most people at some point realize that, the education comes a lot faster if you're around people who are doing what you're doing. And if you have a mentor, so it tends to be in a lot of ways, the safer, faster route, even though it does cost, a pretty penny to get into some of these programs. But I think you're paying to accelerate your business, and you're paying almost as an insurance policy.
So, yeah, they can take your business from 0 to 60 much faster than you can,
Yeah. So, well, before we get into deal specific stuff, one question I like to ask everybody about their big burning why. And you've kind of woven some of the threads in there, about why you were doing things. But if you had to boil it down to one thing, what is your big burning why?
Well, it's evolved, right? So as you get older, you have kids, you do different things, and it's evolved. And for me, right now, I have essentially two things that are pushing me or driving me. So I want to be financially free myself and my wife. I want us to be able to go and have a good time and not have to worry about being at a job every day and things like that, which we have that kind of now. So, I mean, we're really kind of living our dream life. We just aren't quite at our financial goals exactly. But so the life I have today is I'm really close to being on my path to what I wanted to achieve on that front. And then my daughter's a part of my business too. She's my partner now. Yep. And she was, she came to me, she went to college at her freshman year and came to me and said, hey, she was thinking about doing law school after graduate program. And she said, I think I want to take a year off, a gap year, Dad. And I said, okay, great. That's great. You can do that. I'm not paying for it.
Yeah.
I said, if anybody's going to travel for a year, it's going to be me. And she said, well, that's why I'm kind of talking to you. I want to figure out how to create passive income for myself so that I can fund my travels if I decide to do that. And so we started working on a strategy plan for her. This was back when I was in single family. And we put together, okay, we need this many houses. It's going to need to generate this kind of cash flow for you. And we started working on an action plan to acquire those things for her, right? So she could have those travels if she wanted to do it. And around the same time, I was considering transitioning out of single family. And she also was reconsidering law school at the same time too. So I said, hey, why don't you just join me, be my partner in our multifamily venture, and we'll build the business, so Mom and I can kind of hit our financial freedom numbers, and then you can take the business and do whatever you want to with it, right? And I joke with people, I'm trying to build a billionaire in my daughter, and it's kind of a joke, but it's really kind of true at the same time. So I'm trying to build her a business that she can then take and do whatever level she wants to have her perfect life as well, right?
Yeah.
And so those are kind of the two things that really drive me every day is making sure that my wife and I can be happy, and then making sure that my daughter has something that she can then build the life that makes her super successful at whatever level she feels is necessary, and gives her something to build for the future. Right. So
yeah, I love it. I love it. And, I've got two adult daughters now. And, you're right. Your why transitions, and up front, right. I think my big burning why was to get out of my W-2 first, but, now I'm reformulating, exactly what that is, which is weird. I mean, I'm asking every people a couple times a week what their big burning why is. And, I'm still trying to flesh out my new why, because I just retired, but
it evolves.
Yeah, it does. It does evolve, and my last big burning why, like I said, October 31st was my retirement date, and, we're in November right now. So, successfully achieved that one. But yeah, I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people, a lot of people with, our age with, adult children. It's really going to be about, helping them get to where they want to get financially, and, also us getting to where we want to be financially. So that said, let's talk deal specific stuff. You mentioned your daughter's part of your team. So before we get into deal specific stuff, I guess this is part of the deal specific stuff, to be honest with you. Let's talk about the team that took down this 76 unit. How you guys came together, so in addition to your daughter, the other people who were involved with this.
Well, so we talked briefly before, but so there's my core team that I have, and then there's my ancillary team, right? So we've been looking for deals for a long time. We've been sourcing deals, we've gotten pretty successful at it. We've underwritten several hundred projects. We'd put several, dozen LOIs in. We toured properties, and all over our territory and stuff. And I was kind of formulating a strategy. So, but I'll talk to my core team is myself. I guess I'm the principal or the CEO of the operation. Then there's my wife who she does all our underwriting. She's my operations manager. Her previous career was as I always have to remember her title, but it was a senior director, allocation, something or other. And what her job was is that the buyers would come to her with like, I want to buy this blue shirt, and her team would figure out how many smalls, medium, and larges go to every store around the country, right? And they do that largely on Excel sheets. And so for her underwriting and financial modeling is kind of second nature. She's been doing it for 30 years, right? In a clothing business, a giant clothing business. She managed $1 billion for JCPenney's and their inventory. So her transition into our business has been really rapid. She's taken to it really quickly. Yeah,
it's just, I mean, same tools are just a slight adaptation on what your bottom line means and what it is.
Yeah, learning the jargon, learning the targets, learning the outcomes, learning all those things. It's really, that was, and she had been in my real estate business on the single family side for the last decade too. So, she does my books. She's been, in the trenches with me on that side as well. So she already had a really clear understanding of what was a successful asset, and what was a failure. So she kind of knew a lot of that already. So she's adapted really rapidly. And now she does 99% of the work in our underwriting side. I really only touched the last, the last 5 yards of the deal. Right. And then my daughter, she graduated with her finance degree and with a specialization in real estate. And she has a minor in marketing. So she's perfect for my business as well. So she's my partner now, and she does all of our front touch points. So any investor relations portal, investor portal stuff, our social media, our podcasts, all those things. She handles all those things for us.
Nice.
And then I have a partner. I'm really fortunate that I have a substantial key principal partner who has the high net worth, the liquidity, and the experience that you need to kind of do this business. Multifamily is a business that you can't do multifamily unless you've previously done multifamily.
Yeah.
So it's almost like an apprenticeship where you have to go through and have these partners that guide you through the process, even through the deals. Right. And I'm fortunate that I have a really substantial, awesome partner in that too. So, and then I think building my team on a more global or ancillary level is when I was looking at deals, I started to realize that getting awarded deals is a lot of its comfort level that the brokers and sellers have with you as an operator. And so I started to look for resources that brokers in my area that I was talking to regularly that they were comfortable with. So they deal with certain lenders all the time. They deal with certain lawyers all the time. They deal with certain property management groups all the time. And so I went to the brokers that I was working on deals with, and I said, hey, who do you like for lender? Right. And so I engaged that lender and I said, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Can you help me? And that became part of my team. And I did the same thing with property management and with legal and all those resources that you need to be successful in this business. I actually just talked to my local brokers and said, who do you guys work with? Who do you like? And that's who I engaged as my ancillary team. And what ended up happening was, as I'm going through the deal process, trying to be awarded these deals, the brokers were comfortable with me more because they were comfortable with my team.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that. I really do. I know nobody's said it like that before. And I really, I think that's a smart way of doing it, because the broker is going to communicate to the seller the offer point, what your number is, but they're also going to talk about the strength of the offer and the strength of the team. And I mean, you deliberately built a team where the broker would be like, I like these guys, I like the property management group, I've worked with them before. I like the lender, I've worked with them before, so your ancillary team, I like how deliberate you were with that. And I think it's very smart. Like I said, I've never had anybody explain, building their team like that. And it was just like light bulb moment for me. So good.
Yeah. If you're going into a market, it's not enough to talk to the brokers. You need to go build a team in that market if you can. I mean, legal, you could probably have legal come from other places, but then some property management companies are nationwide and lenders are nationwide, of course, but you want to make sure that the brokers that you're dealing with in that market, you're dealing with a team that they're comfortable with. It gives them a greater comfort level, especially if you're new And if you're just kind of bridging into that market too, you're even if you have experience and you're coming into a new market, those people don't know you, right? So anything you can do to give them an additional level of comfort with giving you a deal, awarding you deals, that's a good thing, right? So I would recommend to anybody, if you're going into, whatever town you're going into as a new market, go and research property management groups, lenders that work there that are regularly, and talk to the brokers that do business there and get their referrals.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Great points. So specifically, finding the deal, 76 unit, how did you find the deal, and walk us through, from, finding to contract to due diligence?
Well, I had developed a relationship with the broker team that was operating this deal. We had looked at a few other properties. We'd gotten to best and finals and had, high level discussions with the brokers team. And they really had given me a shot. Right. So it was really them being willing to take a risk on a new guy like me. Right. And part of it, I think, was that I did build a team that they could trust. And so I was really kind of the outlier. The rest of my team was fine. Right. But it allowed me to give them a comfort level so that they were willing to work with me on pushing a contract through, right, or getting a deal through. Brokers, they kind of downplay their influence on this process, and they really do have quite a lot of impact on if you're going to move up the chain or not. And in an environment like I'm in Dallas, they're getting 30 offers on these properties. People are just lobbing offers in on deals. And, there's going to be 5 or 6 in that group that the brokers know, like, and trust, and that came in with the right number and, the right mix of terms. And those people are going to progress through. And it gets down to a point where the broker team and the seller team, they have to be comfortable with you, because it's going to be, I was just in a best and final where there were six offers. All of them were coming in around the same. And I was getting pushed to the top because they closed deals with me. They knew who I was, so they weren't sure about these other groups, and so it's that relationship that really makes the difference, I think.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that kind of helped me through the process. And the reason I really went after this deal, this deal doesn't hit all my buy box numbers. It's a little bit older than I want. It's a little bit smaller than I want. It's, so it's not perfect deal by any means. It works for us, but it's not like if you had to draw out a perfect deal, this is not it.
Yeah.
But I had everything else was perfect, right? The brokers believed in me. The raise was right. So all those things were kind of lined up.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So I love how that all came together for you. And, one thing you said, your buy box, a lot of the things that we've closed on are, near misses, so they're really close to the edge of the buy box, and it's one of those things where when you see a good deal, if it's close to your criteria, we still try to jump on those, even though it's not perfectly in our criteria, because that perfect deal comes by, it's like a once in a lifetime type thing. So $8 million purchase price, what was the capital raise on this one?
Well, we did a bridge. So it's we have a bridge on the properties, and the bridge also covered our CapEx.
Nice.
So we didn't have to raise a ton of money. I would think it was around 2.5 million. Okay. Because we had maybe 700,000 in CapEx that the lender took care of for us. So it was pretty modest for a first deal, but it was still substantial. I mean, $2.5 million, I don't have that laying around.
I don't either.
Yeah. So
I would like to one day, but
we had to go look for it,
Yeah. Tell us about some of the challenges you had on the capital raise.
Well, we had, I didn't focus on it. So I spent the first few years of my business developing a deal system, a deal machine, right? So I got to where I can be in best and finals pretty much at will. I can, if I find deals that work, and there's tons of deals out there, people keep telling me that there's no deals, and there's tons of deals out there. It's just a matter of, can you make them work for your system, right? And we were able to find deals that were working. I was in best and finals every month, And so that was kind of my business, was I was focused on deal finding.
Yeah.
And what I was neglecting the whole time was capital raising, because I sort of had some investors that we had from our single family days. And, we're fortunate that people know me pretty well. And they're like, hey, Sean, they just kind of give me money, right? Because they know how I conduct my business and my family and my life, and they trust me, and I'm really fortunate that I have that support from a number of people. So we had quite a lot of money sort of queued up. I personally talked to everybody and said, hey, this is our transition. We're going to move in this direction. And they were all very supportive. I had people that waited the whole time to place their capital, to place it with us, the whole time we were trying to buy these deals. And which was, it's a year and a half of time, maybe 2 years of time that they're I told them we're going to do this, and they're like, okay, great, we'll wait. Right. And they've got, $100,000 waiting around for me to find a deal. Right. And so we were very fortunate in that regard, but I didn't go beyond that. I didn't start exploring new investors or, capital sources or anything like that. So it was a bit of a struggle. When it really came down to it, I thought, okay, well, I can make this happen.
Yeah.
But we did have to struggle. And I had a couple of partners that I was bringing in as part of the deal as well. And those guys had fallen out. And so I was a little bit short, and we had to make up that shortfall and a few other problems, but we made it through. But it was, I think, focusing on now, I'm focused more on capital raising, because it doesn't matter how good you are at finding deals. If you can't fund them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I was smiling a couple of times through that, because I made the same mistake. Somebody told me early on, if you have a good deal, the money will come. And, I focus 100% on deal finding, and, our first raise, we got the amount, but, it was not easy. But so we talked about
that
finding,
whole thing about
that
whole thing about finding the deal, the money will come, is not true, because it's a lot of it's timing, a lot of it is metrics. People, everybody has to be kind of in the same place that you're thinking they need to be at that time.
Oh yeah.
And it's not always true. So I would definitely focus on capital raising.
Yeah. People have to know who you are before they're going to invest with you.
Right.
So, you can have the best deal in the world, but, if you're an unknown quantity, you're not going to get the money, so,
Right.
It's definitely not a true statement. If you put a couple caveats in there, if you have a really good network, and you have a good deal, the money will come.
Right.
So we talked about finding the deal. We talked about funding the deal. Let's talk about closing the deal and what snags popped up during the process.
Well, I was kind of in charge of everything. So as I guess I am always in charge of everything. But so I was with new lender, new lawyers, knew everything, but I was negotiating all the terms of the contract, all the stuff. So my attorneys kind of took a hands-off approach on that part. But so the closing was kind of tough. I actually kept track of just my inbound emails from the time I looked at the deal to the time I closed the deal, the day that I closed it. I looked at it to the day I closed it. Just my inbound emails for this one deal were 1,372 emails.
Wow.
That's not my responses. That's just the emails that I received. Because you have a title office, you have a lender, you have attorneys, you have all these different entities that have to communicate with you and each other, and you're copied on all those things, right? So
yeah, and a lot of them you have to respond to quickly too. So
it's an emergency every 5 minutes. Gotta have this document, gotta have that document.
You have to have your little bucket brigade with you to put out fires every 30 seconds. So it happens like that. So 1,370 or so emails, to get to the closing point. Yeah. So, well, cool. So let's see, you guys closed, remind me when you closed.
It's a month ago. So so we took over a month and 3 days ago.
All right.
So we just had our first month sort of round up. And we're just getting in the financial statements now and the data and stuff now to kind of see how the first month was. The first month, it just was the property that we bought. They had 0 systems. So just to give you an idea, when I asked during the closing process, I asked the seller for an inventory, of like the maintenance shed and the office, and he just sent me pretty much, I'm paraphrasing, but everything in the maintenance shed is yours. Everything in the office is yours. Good luck. on a piece of paper. He wrote it on a yellow sheet and faxed or scanned it and emailed it to me.
Yeah.
and that was it. So that's how he kind of ran his business, just on pens and paper, right? So there was no systems in place. So we've been, having to get all the systems up and running, and kind of modernize the business. So a lot of the first month has just been trying to get
Inventory.
everything kind of dialed in. But
Yeah.
and I think we're going to be doing that for several months actually to get it going. But
yeah, we've inherited a lot of maintenance sheds with a lot of just random stuff in there, so
yeah, it's
um,
useless.
yeah, and I mean, and I'm sure it's the, the maintenance guys, part of it's probably a little bit of laziness, and part of it's probably I might need this later, so let's keep it here, and if we need it later, it's just easy to get, and it just accumulates. And yeah, we've inherited a couple of issues like that. And I mean, it's not necessarily it's not a terrible thing. It doesn't really affect the operations, but if you're going to take your time and go through it and set up your own systems and inventory, it does take some time.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's great. So transition went well. You're a month into it. Have you started a lot of your CapEx? You mentioned 700 or 8, I think 800,000 or so in capital expenditures. Have you started any of the capital expenses or the renovations yet?
No, not really. So, sorry, my phone.
No worries.
No, not really. We are just sort of turning units at this point, and we're sort of coming up with a game plan for everything. We have a few large deferred maintenance type things that we're doing on the property, so we're kind of game planning those, getting bids in. I'll give you an idea. So the mailboxes don't work. The whole property can't get their mail. Half the property can't get their mail in the mailboxes because the previous owner just neglected the mailboxes, and they're falling apart. And so now we're having to sort of deal with that on an emergency level. We knew that going in, of course, and we have a plan for it. But we're executing that plan. But even if you wanted to do it today, you can't. You have to order mailboxes. Those take 6 to 8 weeks.
It's not cheap either. I mean, it's not cheap, and it's not easy. We've had to replace a couple of those.
Yeah, so it's and we have the money allotted, and everything's there, but it just takes sort of time now to get things. You can't just go down and buy mailboxes at Home Depot. Those have to be ordered in. It takes there's a lead time for everything. So we're structuring right now. Well, we're doing the emergency items as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And then we're kind of structure now a game plan for construction so that we're hitting everything as efficiently and as effectively as possible and as quick as possible. Right. So everything here in Dallas moves really rapidly, so you got to really kind of be moving fast as you can, but you're in an environment that everybody wants to put the brakes on, right? Everybody wants to take their time. So, it's just a matter of pushing as hard as you can to get things done, but dealing with all the slowdowns and delays and things like that come up. So,
yeah. All right. So last couple of questions as we wrap things up. What advice would you give an aspiring investor that's maybe 6 to 12 months behind where you're at now?
Well, it depends on where you are in your phase, right? So I think, and I mentioned this before, but I have sort of a process that I go through anytime I'm trying to develop a new business or plan or execute something new in our business. And I think it all starts with first of all, it starts with your dream, right? What do you want to do? What's your vision? What's your why, your dream? Yeah. But I think the first hurdle that everybody has to overcome is believing, right? They have to believe that it's possible for them.
Yeah.
You can see that it's possible because you're doing it. I'm doing it, right? So if someone said to themselves, hey, I want to buy an apartment building, you can see that it's possible. There's people out there executing this.
Somebody
this all
owns
the time.
them. Yeah.
Right. But believing that you can do it is the biggest struggle, really, I think. And that's something that sticks with you. You have to constantly remind yourself, I can do this, right? I've had 2 or 3 incidences in this whole process of buying this first deal where I thought, man, maybe I'm just not built to do this. Maybe I'm not maybe I don't have the equipment mentally or, physically or whatever it is to do this, and you have to just constantly remind yourself and believe in yourself and keep moving forward through the fear, right? You have to keep conquering that fear that's going to come up all the time. And anytime you're doing something that's bigger in your life, I mean, what I did was 100x my business pretty much overnight. And I went from buying $80,000, houses to $8 million projects. Right. And that's daunting. And there's a lot of fear that you have to overcome to get through that process and to be successful at it. So I think if I were telling anybody, I would say, make sure you believe in yourself, get through that first hurdle and continue to believe in yourself and do everything you can to get through those fears that are going to come up. That would be, that's I hold on to that all the time for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely priceless. All right.
And then the second thing I would tell you is if I were to start my business over again today, if this were 2 years, we rewound 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever, and I was going to start this over again today, I would really focus on capital raising. In multifamily, there's silos of responsibility. You have, deal finding and capital raising as your two primary silos of work. And I would definitely focus on raising capital, because you have the capital, you can find the deals to get into. Like, you're going to have deals. I could partner with you. You find people that you want to find people that you can work with and partner with that like, and trust if you're raising capital.
Yeah.
But raising capital is really the first thing I would start with. I did it the other way around, and I think it made it more complicated to execute my second deal. I was able to get through my first deal, but as soon as I completed my first deal, I had all these opportunities come my way. And my first thought was, how am I going to pay for it?
How am I going to raise the money for this now? Yeah.
How am I going to raise the money?
Exactly.
Right. So if I had a capital raising sort of business already built, my second deal would have been much easier. It'd be much less complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. Our second deal was much smaller than our first deal. Usually people go the other way around. They try to go bigger, but our second capital raise ended up being pretty easy because of the relative size of it. First capital raise, 2 million, second capital raise was like 500,000. So, but had we gone bigger, we would have run into the same problem. It's like we already tapped out our close friends and family, and we hadn't quite built that capital raising train yet. So yeah, for us, that was difficult too. And I agree. So last question before we close, how can listeners learn more about you?
Well, we have a podcast. I do a podcast every week, just like you do. It's a Next Level American Dream podcast. And, we just talk to people. The whole idea of the podcast is I love the American dream. I think that's a fantastic thing, but I think the American dream of the 50s is dead, right?
Yeah.
You can't work for a company for 40 years and retire on a pension. It just doesn't happen anymore. But the American dream as a concept is very much alive. It looks like 1,000 different things now, though. There's people hustling Bitcoin, there's people hustling, Amazon shops, there's people hustling all kinds of things, and they're making their American dream come true, right? So I love to talk to people. We focus on real estate, of course.
Yeah.
But I like to talk to people that are out there achieving their American dream, or people that are helping others achieve their American dream.
Yeah.
So, if someone has I've had people on that are accountants that have coaching programs, all sorts of things, that they're actually out helping others like me achieve their American dream too. So that's kind of the focus of the podcast. Mm-hmm. We don't really delve too much into like details or anything like that, but I like to have people talk about what they're doing and inspire other people maybe to go out and achieve their American dream if they're kind of on the fence. If you're in corporate America and you're just like, I don't know what to do, maybe you'll hear someone on my show that says, I can do that. Right.
Yeah.
And I think if you go to our website, it's just Thomson Multi-Family Group.com. And my last name is spelled a little bit uniquely. It's Thomson. Mm-hmm. There's no P.
No silent P. It's, kind of almost spelled how it's pronounced. I've always wondered how the TH turns into a T in Thomson, but
yeah,
I'm not a linguist.
Yeah. So it's just Thomson Multi-Family Group.com. And from there, that's kind of our hub of information. You can get our podcast there. You can learn more about our investing. You do everything. You can reach out to us. I think you can even schedule a meeting with me on there for a 15-minute phone call. I do those all the time. People reach out to me. They just want advice on their business or something like that. And I take calls all the time like that. Yeah. So, we're pretty easy to access.
Awesome. And we'll have it the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
And very much very much appreciate your time today. I've learned a couple of things, and I think this is a lot of what you have gone through. A lot of other people are facing as well. The idea of believing in yourself. It was something that I struggled with first. The idea of that jump from the single family to the multifamily and getting there. It was something that I think a lot of people that we've talked to on the show have faced. So once again, appreciate your time and the wisdom that you've been able to impart today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.